Hi there, my name is Tom Peacock-Nazil. I'm the founder of Seven Clean Seas. We're an ocean cleanup organization based here in Singapore and operating regionally in some of the world's most hard-hit locations from a plastic pollution standpoint. So as mentioned, Seven Clean Seas is an ocean cleanup organization. We're actually a certified social enterprise in Singapore and also in the UK as well. And everything we do really aligns strongly with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly number 14, which is life below water, but also number 1, no poverty, and number 5, gender equality. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard that our oceans are in crisis. Plastic pollution is flowing into the marine environment at ever more alarming rates, and it's turning up in the farthest reaches of the planet. Now, if we want to really understand just how bad this problem is, there has been a new study just released by System IQ called Breaking the Wave, which gives some new estimates around the amount of plastic actually in and flowing into the ocean on an annual basis. They have actually suggested that there is more plastic flowing into the ocean than we originally thought, and that figure is around 11 million metric tons per annum. Now, people and governments are starting to implement changes to try and tackle this. But even with those changes taking into effect, this study suggests that 11 million metric tons will actually look more like 29 million metric tons. That's a threefold increase. Now, if you want to visualize that, that's 50 kilograms for every single meter of coastline all around the world, globally. And that's an annual figure. It is a monumental amount of plastic. And we are already in a situation where the oceans feel full. Where is it going to go? What are we going to do to stop this before it's too late? Now, there are a lot of reports out there looking at the level of plastic flowing into the ocean, the amount of plastic in the ocean. But what is the underlying cause? There's one particular fact that I find really quite worrying, and it's one of the biggest reasons why we're in this predicament. It's estimated that 2 billion people do not have access to waste management or collection services. That means all of the products they use, whether plastic or not, are not getting collected. They're ending in the natural environment. And we know that the vast majority of plastics in the ocean actually originate from land-based sources being transported through waterways like rivers. So it's no surprise that we're in the situation we are when such a large proportion of the global population don't have any means to handle their waste that they're generating. This is one of the areas that we're really focusing on at Seven Clean Seas. We believe that in order to genuinely achieve clean oceans one day, we've actually got to take a step back and really look at providing this basic human right, which is waste management collection, to all of these communities and individuals around the world that don't actually have them in place. Now, we've been going since 2018. And we started very much as a grassroots organization, just looking at beach cleanups. We quickly grew, we started working with businesses and developing new strategies to really kind of scale up our activity. I'm proud to say that in this time, we've removed over 70,000 kilos of plastic from the marine environment. I'm immensely proud of this, but we have to realize that this is almost an insignificant amount of plastic in comparison to the scale of the problem. Really want to have a meaningful and measurable impact on ocean plastic pollution, then we've got to scale up. We've got to find a way to put zeros on the end of this, and many zeros, and be collecting tens of millions per year. And in order to do that, we're going to have to really look at some innovative strategies from both an infrastructure, but also a funding angle to make sure that that is truly achievable. Now, in terms of what we're trying to achieve, we decided to set out some goals for 2025. Now, the first of which is to be operating in the 7 worst plastic polluting countries. Now you can see on the left, we're already in Indonesia and Malaysia. That's why they're in green. But we are now working with United Nations Development Programme in Vietnam, looking at applying our solutions to Ha Long Bay, one of the natural wonders of this world, but unfortunately it's still plagued with plastic pollution. And in terms of the amount of plastic we want to recover, we're looking at a target of 10 million kilos of plastic by 2025. We have so much work to do. It's barely 4 years, just over 4 years until this rolls around. But we know with the correct partners and the correct strategy in place, we can absolutely achieve this. Now, before we get into our projects and our solutions, let's take a step back and look at the issue of ocean plastic pollution and really kind of what we can do, all of us, to try and alleviate the issue somewhat. Now, you can really break it down into 3 verticals. Upstream is possibly one of the most important areas we need to focus on. This is what everyone can do individually or businesses can do themselves. It's really reflective, looking at their plastic consumption, their habits, their products. What can they reduce? Where can they reduce unnecessary plastics? Can we use material innovation, polymer substitution, or just reduction the old-fashioned way to really minimize our plastic footprints? And this is a great place to start. Now, below kind of the actions we can take in our own daily lives and within our businesses, the next thing that really needs focusing on is waste management infrastructure. Now, we know that there are so many people that don't have the luxury of collection services. So how do we find ways to build these systems and services in locations and communities around the world that need them? And then how can we set up a strategy to actually step back from that system and hand it over to the local municipalities to take over? And below waste management, at the very bottom of the tree, but equally important, is how do we recover plastic from the ocean? There is so much in the ocean and the natural environment already. How do we physically find funding mechanisms to be able to collect that at scale? Now, we identified that the biggest issues that we can really look to fix are midstream, so infrastructure, and downstream collection. But the issue is always going to be funding. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to save the Bengal tiger, decarbonize the atmosphere, or clean the oceans in our case. The issues around funding are always the limiting factors. And what we know is that waste management doesn't exist in many of these locations because it doesn't make economic sense. In a high urban area, it's easy to collect plastic from a small geographical footprint at a volume high enough to sell that for a profit. The second you get into kind of rural island locations in many developing countries specifically, the actual population density is very low. And that means the plastic density is low. So the cost for someone to go and collect that plastic and aggregate it and then sell that on into the recycling industry at a profit to pay for the infrastructure is almost impossible. So we need a funding mechanism that can decouple that material value, a funding mechanism that can be scalable and complement traditional waste management practices. For us, that's where the innovation came in. We call it plastic offsetting, and it's a scalable funding mechanism that we can use to invest in infrastructure to stop plastic entering the ocean and actual plastic recovery from the ocean directly. Now, we'll talk about plastic offsetting in a little bit, but first of all, I'd like to introduce our 2 projects. We're really proud of what we're doing here. And the first project is in Indonesia on an island called Bintan. It's the island with the second highest volume of tourists in Indonesia, and it's absolutely beautiful. There's a marine protected area, huge, all the way to the east side, but unfortunately it's plagued with ineffective municipal waste management and high levels of plastic leakage. It's estimated that around 9,000 tons of plastic is leaking into the natural environment every year from this island alone. Traditionally, being a tourism island, they're really struggling with COVID-19, and actually a lot of people have lost their jobs. So we were able to offer employment to some of these ex-hospitality workers who were in desperate need of some work. With their help, we are doing mangrove, coastline, and nearshore plastic recovery. It's been hugely successful. And we're now working with some of the Orang Laut villages, which are traditionally Sea Gypsy nomadic communities that have settled permanently on land, but don't necessarily have waste management in place. What we're doing is installing infrastructure. It's not very technologically advanced infrastructure, but it's effective. We're upcycling oil barrels that we're collecting out of the ocean and turning them into plastic bins for the community. The chief who we're working closely with is actually going to be charging a plastic collection fee from the houses of around £1. It's actually 20,000 Indonesian rupiah per month. And that fee actually employs one of the villagers to collect that plastic on a daily basis and take it to either recycling or through to the managed landfill on the island. It's great because it provides an opportunity to the village, but it also helps them get on top of their plastic waste issues. The next step is for us to scale this up and build a proper collection and sorting facility so that when we're collecting much larger quantities of plastic, we can separate the types of plastics, bale them and store them until we've got volumes high enough to sell them at scale into the recycling industry. Here are some pictures of our project. You can see on the bottom right picture just how devastatingly polluted these locations can be. It's really sad because sometimes these are the most beautiful areas in the world and so important from an ecological perspective. You can see Jazlan in the bottom left. He's one of our key personnel over there, cutting the oil drums that we've upcycled into the bins that will be distributed. And I'm happy to report that a few weeks into this project, it is working as planned. So the second project we have is very much a technological solution. We realize that 70% of all plastic originates from land-based sources and essentially flows through rivers. So if we're going to spend money on cleaning the ocean, the most effective place to spend that money is on rivers. Let's intercept, let's stop this plastic before it ever gets to the ocean. Now, there are systems out there that are very good, but they tend to fall into two brackets. They're either low cost and low volume, which are great for your smaller rivers, or they are high cost and high volume. Now, it's amazing because they can collect huge quantities of plastic from some hugely polluted rivers all around the world. But the bottom line is it makes it difficult to scale when they're expensive. If something is too expensive, it is almost impossible to be installing thousands of these around the world. We need to try and make a solution as cost effective as possible and also as simple as possible so that we can physically manufacture it in situ in the countries that we're going to be operating. Now, we teamed up with Marina Bay Sands, the hotel in Singapore, and Longitude Engineering, who are a naval architecture firm, to design a system that has a 1.5 million kilo capacity per annum, which is huge, but has a cost which is literally a fraction of some of the other solutions, high volume solutions on the market. Now, we've been very fortunate to have some fantastic partners help us get through to where we are today, and things are just getting started. We're working closely with the United Nations in Bangkok, and we're actually also a member of the incubator in Vietnam for the United Nations Development Programme, looking at solutions for Ha Long Bay. We're also working closely with the 3R Initiative, which is set up by the carbon market's biggest standards agency, Vera. They're essentially now looking at plastic to try and make standards around plastic so that we can extend the solution, plastic offsetting, way beyond what we're capable of doing and really create an industry around this. And this is where it comes to our scalable funding mechanism. We call it plastic offsetting. The concept is really simple. If a company or a person has a necessary plastic footprint, they can commission 7 Clean Seas and our team to recover or intercept that plastic before it ever gets into the ocean. It allows the company to really take the lead in sustainability, but also it gives them ample opportunities from a marketing, branding, and even talent acquisition perspective. We package up 1,000 kilos of plastic in a plastic credit. We call it a plastic credit because it's very similar to the terminology used in the carbon market. But the bottom line is there's huge levels of environmental and social benefit. It's a triple win. The company wins because they get to achieve their sustainability goals and be plastic neutral. We win because we get a mandate to clean the ocean. But most importantly, we get the investment to build the infrastructure we need to clean the oceans. There are two main methodologies, which again are actually very simple. If somebody is selling a product, now there's going to be plastic either in the product, in the packaging, or in the supply chain, unfortunately. We always want them to reduce where they can first. But what they are not able to reduce, they can commission us to offset on their behalf. If it's a big company or an event, now they definitely have plastic footprints. We can work with them to reduce that down to a minimum level, but at some point it becomes impossible to get lower without the technological breakthroughs that we're all waiting for in polymer science. And that again is a good time to look at something like plastic offsetting. The big takeaway that I'd like everybody to really pay attention to is that we're at a tipping point. We can absolutely fix this problem, but unless we all get on board from a personal perspective, but also very importantly from a corporate perspective as well, unless we do that and we make the commitment to work together towards a more sustainable future, we won't achieve it. We can achieve it and we will achieve it because I believe that we're going to do the right thing. And the work we're doing here at Seven Clean Seas is one tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. We all have our part to play when it comes to the environment and trying to find solutions or live better with less impact. Anyone can go out there and make a difference. We started as a grassroots project and things just grew organically, and this is what we've been able to achieve. Try something new, start a group, create a community, or just really focus on your own consumptions. And I'm confident that we will be able to fix this in our lifetime. There's a lot of work to do, but don't get beat down over it. Get enthusiastic and rise to the challenge. Thank you very much for listening today. From myself and the whole Seven Clean Seas team, I'd like to say thank you very much.